Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for NFL Week 15. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. This is conventionally the start of the fantasy football playoffs for most people. If you're playing in best ball tournaments, this next round is getting started in your home leagues. You got playoffs getting rolling. If you're in the fishbowl, I think this is like the quarterfinals over there. I'm dangling above the cut line in the fishbowl. We'll see if I'm able to advance. Big shout out to the Burrow Chase stack for carrying pretty much that entire team, because otherwise I've always had Kevontae Turpin on the bench when he had a huge fishbowl scoring game and duds when I started him. Yeah, so you play silly games, you win silly prizes, but that such is my lineup decision making. But anyway, we have a huge slate of games. Bye weeks are officially done. So we've got all 32 teams in action, and it gets started Thursday evening. Rams, Niners. Niners, 2.5-point favorites. Niners back from the dead, ? After beating up on the Bears pretty good when I had personally left the Niners for dead going into that matchup. The Rams, of course, scored one of the more impressive wins of the entire season last week by defeating the Buffalo Bills and scoring a ton of points. I mean, just unreal stuff from Stafford, Kupp, Nakua, you name it. They had it. But how does that all square up in this particular matchup tonight at the big jean jacket in wherever it is in the Bay Area?
Levi Stadium. Yeah. I think as someone who didn't really think the 49ers were so dead that they lose to the Bears, I still was pretty surprised at how well the 49ers played in that game. I guess the passing game, especially, Brock Purdy, hopefully settled some of the whatever remaining questions there were about the shoulder injury, because it sounded kind of bad 3 weeks ago and then missed the game, obviously, against Green Bay. I was worried he would go into the last week visibly limited by it, but if he was, you couldn't tell from the box score or the play results. Maybe that was a Bears failing more than the 49ers playing so great. But it's tough for me to guess, how real that 49ers showing was therefore, and if that team is going to be equally impressive against the Rams. Certain parts should be. The ongoing Trent Williams absence is a huge problem. The Rams have some front seven talent that's pretty disruptive, especially the two Florida State guys they drafted this year. But Purdy and those receivers and Shanahan should be able to hurt, I think, the 49ers corners. The corners on the boundary are pretty good, actually, but they're just small. Kobe Durant and Darius Williams are both under 5'10", I'm pretty sure. And Jawan Jennings is a bully receiver. It's largely how he wins. So it should be a good game for Jennings. If Debo can turn the switch back on, it should be a big game for him. What I can't tell what is going to happen is the running game with the 49ers and Guerrero. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about him. I don't know what to make of that. I think if he were a veteran, if it were Sunday instead of Thursday, I'd feel a little bit better about the detail of one limited practice. But given Guerrero's injury history, and he missed a bunch of training camp, by the way, so he kind of began the year behind schedule as far as picking up the playbook and all that stuff, or as far as the time that he had that he could put toward getting that stuff down. He was simply set back by that injury. So I don't know if Shanahan is going to have the trust with him that the Seahawks do, for instance, with Kenneth Walker when he doesn't practice. It might be a game where Guerrero plays, but maybe instead of 40 snaps like the plan was, he plays 20, and I really don't know what to do with 20 snaps,
So that is the big conundrum that I think a lot of people are facing when it comes to Guerrero and having the short week, this sort of uncertain details about the potential workload. Do you think like the sheer lack of depth options behind Guerrero kind of forces the issue for San Francisco where they're going to need to, just kind of hope and pray that he doesn't aggravate the foot because they need him to kind of take on the full workload?
The desperation could push them toward Guerrero from scrimmage functions. At the very least, I expect Guerrero to miss some passing down snaps because Patrick Taylor is the preferred pass blocker anyway of the group that they have. But if I had to call it, and I hate having to make this call, and I hope it doesn't turn out this way. I hope I'm being too pessimistic. I kind of expect it to be something like 20 snaps Guerrero if he plays, 20 snaps, or maybe more like 15 to 20 snaps for Keyshawn Vaughn, and then like 20 to 25 for Patrick Taylor, heavily correlated to passing down situations.
Okay, so most of the rushing work should go Guerrero's way.
And I don't think Patrick Taylor is a great pickup, honestly. It's like if you got to play him, you could do worse, I suppose, but he's not there to do much more than block. He's not a threat from scrimmage outside of the preseason, basically.
Enjoyed his stylings at Memphis, I guess, but yeah, probably think you probably have that pretty dialed in. To kind of like hold your foot to the fire even more so, the two sort of late season running back darlings, but both Guerrero and then Zach Charbonnet. If you had to pick between the two of them, because Charbonnet's usage we think would be contingent on the status of one Kenneth Walker, and then the compounding issue for that one is you got to wait until Sunday night. And yes, there are two games on Monday night, but you're kind of out of pivot options if you kind of steel yourself and go with Charbonnet and Walker ends up ultimately being active. So if you were posed with that sort of conundrum, what would you do?
Yeah, that's tough. Walker, I don't know if they're going to try to force Walker onto the field the same way they would have last year. I think last year he had at least one case where he didn't practice and then did play pretty much as a starter too. Walker has shown that he can do that, but I just don't think, especially after the kind of game Charbonnet had last week, that they need to be so desperate about it. But who knows? Also, Kenny McIntosh did a good job, so that's another reason it would be a little odd, I think, if Walker played without practicing in this particular case. So I guess if I had to call it, I'd say Charbonnet right now, but I could easily regret that, depending if Guerrero plays so many as 30 snaps, I could regret that. And if Walker plays so many as 20, I could regret it too.
Yeah, this really is like fantasy football in a nutshell. Like, of course, we're in week 15, and it's not a Christian McCaffrey question. It's, what does like a half of the snap share look like for one Isaac Guerrero, and how can that change the complexion of my entire fantasy league? So we're really in the mud on this one. I have a hard time calling it. I personally was out of fab in every league that I could have scooped Guerrero in, so I don't have any skin in the game that way, but I believe you do. So, I mean, I think your analysis there when it comes to Charbonnet versus Guerrero, which is I think a conundrum that a lot of people are facing. I think that's some good intel that you're putting out there. Why don't we jump on over to Sunday, unless you have any other lingering thoughts on this game?
Rams offense should pretty much roll. That's about all on them, though.
I like it. I'm in for that. I mean, we got an over-under fittingly of 49 in that game, so we could be treated to another high-scoring Thursday night matchup on somewhat of the other end of the spectrum, although this is eminently more watchable than I would have thought it would have been about a month ago. We got the Cowboys going to Carolina to face the Panthers. Panthers 2.5-point favorites in this one. The Panthers showed themselves ably last week against the Eagles, covering that spread, almost winning that game outright. The Cowboys, meanwhile, their disaster season kind of continued. Unfortunately, on Monday night, they get another casualty in the mix there with Overshown suffering a pretty nasty sounding knee injury. Your thoughts here on this game?
Yeah, that's a bummer about Overshown, of course. I can't tell how much it makes the Dallas defense worse, though. I feel like they were kind of a bit of a mess, as it were, especially, and if only because the run defense has been so bad all year, it makes it tougher to defend the pass too. It makes it tougher to set up the pass rush, which is where in the past they would kind of do a lot of their flexing. But also, as long as Micah Parsons is active, they can have that potentially game-wrecking presence. I don't know if the Panthers are the team that Parsons sets up especially well against here. I guess the way it would go well for Dallas and poorly for the Panthers is Cooper Rush scores via CeeDee Lamb almost certainly, but quickly, steadily enough that the Panthers are kind of yanked away from the run game where they need to stay. And I think Dave Canales understands that pretty well at this point. He seems pretty committed to keeping Chuba Hubbard in that 20 carry range, which they should absolutely try to get him over. But if you can convince the Panthers to stop running, that's where you've got them, down, and Parsons is able to freely just chase the quarterback. So if the Panthers can avoid that particular scenario, then I don't think the Dallas defense will be that much of an impediment. But the Panthers, they should understand it, and probably do understand it, as just that, the more you throw the ball, the more you're kind of pushing your luck. On the Dallas side, Rico Dowdle's had a really good stretch here against some bad defenses. I think we're nearing in now on the longest stretch that he's ever been in a true workhorse role ever in his career. At South Carolina, normally he'd get to like 2 or 3 games and get hurt or start fumbling. He's been fumbling this year, and he's been really close to dropping some wide open passes this year. So obviously I'm a hater, or insofar as I don't believe the stuff that he's a real starting running back. I think he's just a backup. I think as far as I've been wrong about Rico Dowdle this year, it's tantamount to how I was wrong about Ty Chandler last year. It's like, this is a name that will, I think, shift toward the backup area of the depth chart pretty soon, or on any competitive team. But I guess the Panthers defense is bad enough that it could be another good game for Dowdle here. I just it should be, because he only tends to produce against weaker defenses, and the Panthers certainly are shorthanded on personnel.
Yeah, no, that they definitely qualify in that regard. Our guy Blurpy has a question for the class that I think a lot of people can rock with. I think a lot of people are dealing with how to sort this particular grouping out, or some mixture of it. Sincere McCormick, we're picking 2 of these guys. Sincere McCormick, DeAndre Swift, and Zach Charbonnet. So 2 of those 3.
Sorry, just give me just a second. I think I'd go Charbonnet and sorry, what was the other running back?
So you have Swift or Sincere McCormick.
I think I go McCormick and Charbonnet. If Swift practices today, tomorrow, I might kind of regret that, but against the Vikings, I doubt it. I think the Vikings are kind of going to just put a beating on the Bears. I
kind of do too, and I think McCormick looked pretty good last week. So
yeah, Team McCormick for sure.
Yeah, man. Let's see. Go. Was he a road runner or a minor?
I'm sorry, I don't know that much about Looney Tunes. Which one do we want him to be?
Well, was he UTSA or UTEP? I get the 2 confused.
Oh, okay. I think that he's UTSA. Yeah.
Go Road
Sorry,
Runners.
I thought this was some kind of another one of your cultural references that I just don't know about, because like Nick Whalen, I only watched 2 or 3 things.
No Twin Peaks season 3 references to be made on this podcast.
Up the Twin Peaks references, or I'm just never going to have any idea what's going on.
And then let's see, we've got some pass catchers to tackle as well. And there's the added context here that Blurpy notes that he's worried about starting multiple Bears and starting multiple Raiders, so keep that in mind here. But Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen, or Deebo Samuel, pick 2 of those 3 or 4.
Pick 2 of those. I wouldn't be that concerned about going with too many Raiders, given if the 2 particular Raiders are like McCormick, Myers, and Bowers, of course. But it seems like the Raiders are sticking with McCormick, and the Raiders put more on specifically Bowers and Myers than probably. I mean, there can only be like a couple teams in the league that put more target share on two particular players than the Raiders do those particular two players. So I don't think there's that much risk, at least if it's PPR. I don't think there's that much risk ever going with Myers. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I feel like I sort of expect the Raiders offense to function more steadily than I do the Bears. So I'm kind of leaning no Allen out of that one. I think I'm going Debo and Myers.
I'm between Debo and Keenan Allen as to like who I would drop from that trio. I mean, it's been so rough for Debo for a little while now.
It has been, but do you think that's going to last? I'm this is not a rhetorical question. It's like, doesn't it feel like that can't last forever? Like, it didn't last forever with Waddle. Debo claims he's not hurt. He says he's open. He's the squeaky wheel. So, and the Rams defense, meanwhile, doesn't seem that great. But yeah, it's not an easy call. Don't get me wrong. I'm getting visions of the Bears offense just looking like a bunch of clowns against the Vikings, and Josh Metellus kind of clobbering Keenan Allen on these just hospital balls.
I know it's really tricky. Like I don't know. I got to like draw a line somewhere because I've been disenchanted with Debo's performance this year, but I think the squeaky wheel thing, like with him and AJ Brown this week, both, I think they're both interesting cases of, true alpha receivers.
You're getting the Madden franchise mode. Yeah, you're getting the Madden franchise mode message from his agent about like, my client's morale number is down to 75% if you don't shape up.
So, Purdy's got to, you know what? And with Rome kind of like taking over last week a little bit and DJ Moore, like, I think there's a clear path at the very least for Debo producing tonight, even on the short week. So, we will go with
maybe
Myers
he's the answer at running back for the Garendo question.
Yeah. What if? And then lastly, I'm going Mandrews over Jake Ferguson. I know the Panthers are horrible against tight ends, but Mark Andrews is seeing more action. He's going to be fresh coming off the bye, and they're playing the Giants. So I think that's where my preference lies for the tight end position there. Let's scoot on over. We got the Chiefs and the Browns. We've got the Chiefs 4-point favorites on the road in this spot. It's going to be pretty windy in Cleveland. We got an over-under at 44. I think that the big question is, this Browns offense, as it's been since Jameis Winston took over, it's lively, it's fun. They still can't run, but Jerry Jeudy has suddenly become a guy who's a prominent figure on a lot of playoff teams and advancing teams. David Njoku, same thing, and Jameis Winston, if I remember correctly, you tweeted about him on Sunday in the level at which he's playing. But how does that all factor in against this Chiefs defense?
For what it's worth, I just pulled up Yahoo's player splits on Jameis Winston, and they categorize things by weather sometimes. And for Jameis Winston's career, they logged 27 games, and I don't know what the threshold is. Sorry, that qualify as quote unquote windy, and in those games, I'm sure every quarterback takes a hit. But yeah, I guess it's worth noting that in these 27 games, Jameis Winston has basically had that season, that one Tampa Bay season, which was only 16 games, mind you. But it's these almost exact same numbers. It's like 5,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 26 interceptions, 58% completed, 7.2 per attempt. So normally Jameis Winston, in a large part, recently he's been a big fantasy asset because he throws so many passes. Like, he's pushing for 50 attempts in some of these games. And I guess I'd be surprised if this is one of those games, both because I think the Chiefs are sort of prepared to do a good measure of ball control here. And I think if the win does take something away from Jameis Winston, then it's at a higher cost to the Browns offense than the Chiefs, because like you said, the Browns are not running well. So unless the Browns can start running better, I do worry that some of this decrease in Jameis Winston's completion percentage that we might otherwise project because of the wind, that could be the difference between some of these converted, third downs, and you might miss a drive or two that happens in a normal weather setting, thus decreasing the pass attempt number from like 47 to 38 or something like that. And that might be pressing the margins a little on Winston, because he hasn't actually been that clean of a quarterback. Like he's still turning it over. He's still wacky. He's still more of a wild card than anything. And it's sort of like, as much as the volume makes him super dependable when the volume is there, I do worry that this setting might be where the volume kind of goes a little bit down at least. But you could do worse, and he is going to chuck it. So
there is that. We know one thing about him. He's gonna let it rip, even in these conditions. But any like slight downgrades for guys like Judy, or you're still rolling him out there?
Definitely not. I'm not worried about Judy at all, and I'm not worried about Tillman either. And Tillman looks better if Trent McDuffie shadows Jerry Judy. I just think in Judy's case, it's not a deal breaker at all, because he could still see 10 to 12 targets, and McDuffie's good, but I don't think Judy's going to catch fewer than half of the targets that he has against him. Also, Judy might be able to beat Trent McDuffie. McDuffie's a really good corner, but Judy might be in this. You look at his numbers and they generally indicate that he is a uniquely talented receiver. He's just kind of had a weird career for various circumstantial reasons. So I say, full speed ahead for Judy, Tillman, and Njoku. It's just more like maybe don't get your hopes up for the ridiculous games they've had lately.
There is some chatter, and I've verified it via RotoWire.com that David Njoku is dealing with a bit of a hamstring injury.
Okay, sorry. Maybe double check on him then, because if he's not healthy,
right, then you
got Tillman needs to be cleared, but if he is, then what I said applies, and obviously if he's not in, then it doesn't.
Is there enough there if you are a manager with Njoku? Is there enough there with Jordan Akins to where you'd be okay pivoting to him as a waiver wire guy, or how that league would have to be pretty deep, I'd have to imagine.
Well, the weird thing about Akins is he was supposed to be a pass catching specialist. Like, he was a former center fielder prospect with the Texas Rangers, and then in the NFL he was supposed to be like a wide receiver tweener almost. So he should, like, the theory should make sense that if Njoku is out, then Akins is running routes and getting targets probably. But I don't know. It's been a while, and Akins hasn't done anything in the NFL. The little he did was with the Texans forever ago, and he wasn't particularly good then either. So if you have to, you could do worse. And if Jameis Winston throws 40 passes, then I'm sure Akins would do something useful in the event that Njoku were out. It's just it seems like there might be a better option in your free agent group. Just check to see if there is.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to square it. Before we get on over to our next game, we got a message from our pal Nick Whalen. He's going to tell you some stuff about DraftKings Pick 6.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-788-897777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And look at that. We're back. Let's go. Dolphins, Texans. This one in Houston, we got the Texans 2.5-point favorites. In this one, the Texans coming off the bye, the Dolphins coming off that kind of wild overtime win over the Jets. What are we looking at?
I'm having trouble figuring out what the Texans are or could be differently what they are presently, because they haven't been very good this year, and some of the struggles make sense to me, but not all of them. Certainly the extent to which the offensive line has struggled has been a little weird when there was so much overlapping personnel from the previous year. So there's sort of like something wrong there, and if we don't know what it is, then it's hard to know when it might be fixed and what it would take to fix it. So as much as I can say, like, CJ Stroud and Nico Collins are locked in, and Tank Dell, by having Nico Collins present, should be more the good version of Tank Dell than the bad version he's been, like 2/3 of the year. So as long as those two are going, then Stroud should be able to go. Mixon, of course, has been one of the few constant or near constant anyway positives for the Texans this year. And I feel like if Stroud is going because of both Collins and Dell going, and if Mixon is going up to the standard that he's mostly had this year, which I know the Dolphins are playing better defense lately than when they started the year, but I still feel like Mixon should be able to run on them. So maybe I'm banking on some kind of false premise somewhere in there, but I feel like the Texans offense should show up, and it's still difficult on the other side of the ball, in my opinion, to guess what the Dolphins offense is going to do. Certainly they've been more encouraging lately than they were to start the year. If Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are going again, then maybe it's as simple as, it's green lights everywhere. Certainly the Texans are short on cornerback depth. I think their insistence on running a safety at the slot rep is also a little bit questionable. So Jalen Petrie's out. I guess I don't know if they probably have someone like Eric Murray or some other safety corner tweener playing that spot. But the Dolphins, of course, were being kind of carried, limping along, maybe it would be better to say, in the passing game by Devin Achane and Jonnu Smith for what seemed like 2 months. If Tyreek and Waddle are basically back, and hopefully we can assume they are, hopefully their recent resurgence is sustainable, then at that point, the Dolphins are kind of just a loaded offense again, because Achane, when he has space, we know he does big damage, and he's shown the ability to take on some amount of volume, even in games where there isn't much space. I think the Dolphins are pushing their luck to do that. But either way, I just mean to say some of Achane's struggles whatever his lowest points this year were might not have happened if Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle keep producing like they have the last couple of weeks. So I just mean to say this could be a shootout, despite both defenses having some intimidating parts. It just requires kind of certain levels stabilizing in both teams' offenses at the same time after previously being areas of issue going into this game. It's just that each of those issues, each of those instances of problems has players who generally expect to produce well, especially when you're talking like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So at the very least, I think this is a game that could be one of the higher scoring on the slate. It's just I can't tell if I'm getting too ahead with either or both of the offenses. Like maybe I'm thinking more what it would be a fair expectation for them in week 1 of next year or something than this particular week. But I don't know. I certainly hope that the Texans get rolling, because one of my alive best ball teams has a Stroud Nico combo that could use the Jets at this particular time. But I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too optimistic.
Let's see. I have been largely disappointed with the Texans relative to, pretty leveraged on them as well. And other than Mixon, it hasn't really gotten you where you wanted to be necessarily. So I'm going to remain a little bit skeptical on them, even with the Dolphins being on the road and not having a world beater of a defense. And I think it's a small sample, but Tua has had a lot of success in dome stadiums previously. Yeah. I feel like the Dolphins are kind of like a dome team that just happens to play outside. So I think the conditions suit them here. as far as the personnel is concerned. And the Texans have given up the most pass touchdowns in the league, or they're tied in that number with the Atlanta Falcons, actually at 26. So
I think I like the
saying
over on this. I like this to be like a 50-plus point game, I think.
Yeah, and you can get it at 46.5 at some shops. So I like the over there. I like the Dolphins to cover this one. I'm feeling good. I'm cautiously optimistic about Waddle's kind of resurgence.
It feels like they're fixing problems, whereas the Texans are just kind of hoping things get better or something.
And kind of have like by happenstance, like ultimately like taking more problems on. It seems like as the season continues, and if they weren't in the AFC South, that record probably doesn't look so good, and where they stack up against some of those AFC wildcard teams might not be as favorable. Let's move on over. Not a ton to dive into here, but gotta touch on it. These next two games, we got Jets, Jaguars, and Commanders, Saints coming up. Jets, Jaguars to start us out. Was there any real takeaway from the Jets game last week, or is that more just sort of like their one last stand that ultimately fell short?
They kind of did a similar thing against the Seahawks. It looked like they were going to beat the Seahawks after the first two drives, but eventually, whenever it was, Rodgers found Leonard Williams for the touchdown, and then they kind of fell apart and watched it all slip away. They kind of did a similar thing, I guess, against the Dolphins, but what I can't tell is will the Jets find a way to have both halves of football work the way they did the first half the last 2 weeks, or was it more like what you were saying? Like, is this a death breath where they're getting this a couple last spasms of activity, but they're more so just kind of running on empty and about to go down for good any second? I don't really know, but I don't know. I think either of these two teams can just completely blow it in this game without the other doing anything well. So I don't want to say the Jets can't win the game or have some amount of success in various capacities, because the Jaguars are just, I mean, they're both teams are complete jokes. Like I don't know what either one has to play for.
I don't either. I feel like the Jets are more of like a larger scale disappointment than the Jaguars. The Jaguars, it's more like reality setting in that not even Trevor Lawrence could fix them, and obviously they don't even have him anymore right now. On the Jets side, I think that the backfield is worth a look real quick. So Breece Hall was still being bothered by his knee issue as of Wednesday afternoon. Not sure what's up with him as of Thursday. But if it's Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, what's your lean?
They got a pretty much equal split last week. I guess I should have checked I'm sure the Braylon Allen route, or I would expect anyway, the Braylon Allen route number was higher. We got Allen logged at 21 routes. Davis logged they're both 21. Okay, so almost exactly literally even split of the workload last week, and in the case last week, Davis was the slightly more correct answer because he had a touchdown. So Allen could get that touchdown. Allen could get the next 3 touchdowns between them, for all I know. So this should be at least as good of a spot for Braylon Allen as last week, and might be better. Similar to Davis, I guess, but it's like, I doubt the Jets are the team that's going to run for 4 touchdowns per week. I'm assuming there's 1 or 2 to split up.
Yeah, I think so. And like you said, the workload about as 50-50 as you could possibly draw it up. Our guy Avery has been patiently waiting, so I want to hit his question quickly. 3 receivers from this quintet. No, it's more than that, but I'm out of numbers of a Latin root at a certain point. AJ Brown, Marvin Harrison, DJ Moore, Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas, and Adam Thielen. I think for me, I am buying the squeaky wheel a little bit for AJ Brown this week. I will roll him out there. I think DJ Moore. I guess I'm going down with the ship. I know it's a danger spot going up to Minnesota, but I'm going to do it. And you know what? I'll take Brian Thomas over Marvin Harrison.
Do we think Ladd is playing? Because I would definitely play Ladd if he's in this week. AJ Brown, I would definitely play.
We
For
have
me,
him
it comes
ranked
down
as if it's iffy.
Well,
When it comes to Lad.
if Lad is out, then I guess I'll just kind of go with what John said. But otherwise, I'll say Lad, AJ Brown. For me, it's like a more Marvin Harrison toss up, but I'll lean more because I don't know. At least the Bears won't be able to run on the Vikings, and they'll have to throw it. Hopefully.
Yeah. That's how I see it as well. And then one more here before we move on to our next game. Would you start Garendo or Cooper Kupp with a wrinkle here that the opposition has Puka?
I'd start Kupp for sure. Yeah, no concern about Kupp and Kyron on the same team or what that said.
Yes.
Yeah, I would not worry about Kupp. I think this is a perfectly nice setup for Kupp here.
Yes.
And Kyron,
Best of
really.
luck. Best of luck to you, and hopefully you get a hot start to your week so you can play a little bit of catch up on your opponent who allegedly is projected to score a lot of points. We'll see about that. Let's go Commanders Saints. Jake Haener starting, and that's why I think we see the Commanders as 7.5 point favorites. Commanders off the bye. I don't know. The Saints, I feel like that this is tough. I mean, like I think you can really only justifiably start Kamara from that group, and I think if as far as Washington goes, they lose Noah Brown, of course, earlier this week. You love the projection for McLaurin and Jaden Daniels, but beyond that, I'm not totally sure what else we need to fully discuss here.
I think Brian Robinson should have a good game. There's a chance the Saints defense plays well from scrimmage in the first half because they're playing hard. They weren't playing hard for Dennis Allen. But I think the problem either way for the Saints is their defense will get gassed in the second half, if nothing else. And if Robinson's still in the game, I think he could get at least one short touch. Haener is going to be giving them short fields almost certainly. Marshawn Lattimore should be active for this game. Marshawn Lattimore revenge game, 3 interceptions on Jake Haener. It all lines up.
I was saying to Waylon in the betting pod earlier, Jake Haener got to be one of the funniest PED cases I think I can remember.
Was it like a hair loss thing or something?
I don't know, but if you're going to roid up, max it out, in my opinion. Moving on. Ravens Giants, 16.5 points is the line here in favor of the Ravens. This one at the Meadowlands. There was a kind of a viral report coming out of the Giants practice today that during the open period to the media, 0 of 17 passes were completed.
I know they were implying that the weather had something to do with it, but do we know that for sure? Is this maybe just the first glimpse of practice the media has had in a while? The Giants, I don't know. Drew Lock barely seems like he can. I don't know. Like use a shopping cart. I don't know. Like he looks so disoriented and erratic and just constantly off script. I guess Tommy DeVito, by contrast, could be like a sort of stabilizing presence, let us say. I don't know. But against the Ravens, even the bad version of the Ravens defense ought to be able to kind of just tee up here because they won't even need to defend the run after the first half, maybe fourth quarter it takes until. But the Ravens should get close to covering this game. And if you get close to covering a spread like that, you don't have to defend the run anymore in the second half. You can just tell everybody, like, yeah, just rush the passer. If they run a draw on us, whatever, who cares? We're up, 17 points. So I'm not getting my hopes up for anybody really in the Giants offense. If it would be anybody, it would be Neighbors, I guess. But does he have any latest injury or anything like that? I assume he's fine.
Not positive.
They have such a long injury. Okay, so he's limited with the hip, but that should be okay. So yeah, Neighbors, I think, can only be helped by the switch to DeVito. And with that said, I'm not as easily taking the leap of faith with Tyrone Tracy. He should get 40 snaps, and there's something to work with there. You could definitely do worse. But I'm worried that Tracy will get kind of shut out of the rushing gains by the early phase Ravens defense. And at which point, at best, it would be like he needs 4 or 5, 6 catches or something, which could happen as a check down target. But I think that's the particular way it would have to work for him.
And I will say, and I can be accused of letting my purple and black glasses show, but I think I try to be objective on this show. And I think we can glom onto narratives as the season unfolds. And I think the Ravens' pass defense was horrendous earlier on in the season. I think it got better the last 3 or so weeks going into their bye. And I think that playing against a passing game of this caliber, I think the pass defense will hold up just fine. So it's really just a matter of the Ravens offense getting back in sync. Derrick Henry cut his dreads. I don't know what to make of that necessarily, but
you shouldn't do that in season. I think it's risky.
It is. It's a bit of a vibe shift. We'll see.
I'm almost a little, John. I'm almost more worried about the Ravens' offense disappointing than the defense in this one, but they can play with half the playbook and still zip this one up pretty easily.
I think that the Ravens could have a bit of a bloodletting here. We'll see. I'm not positive about betting it at 16, and they have a history of not doing great as huge favorites. But in Meadowlands in December, tough. And Lamar Jackson, prior to that game against the Eagles, this was the only NFC team that he had lost to. Although that was under the tutelage of one Daniel Jones. So ancient history there.
Better
oh boy. Let's see. We got one more in the early window. We've got the Bengals and the Titans. A clash of your two favorite coaches, the Sensei and the Grasshopper squaring off.
Me to it. I think Brian Callahan, this is probably going to set up, since everything for the Callahans must work in family business type dynamics. This was Zach Taylor, the bigger brother, the adopted bigger brother of the Callahan family. This recreates the setting where the older brother bullies the younger one, even though he's adopted. Even though the bigger brother's adopted, he bullies the younger one. And that's Brian Callahan's role here, I think. Maybe the Titans can, Tony Pollard is playing well enough. Maybe they keep the chains moving, stay in the game. But I feel like the Bengals, if they're still focused, and I don't know why they would cut out at this point, they should be able to throw all over this Titans defense.
Yeah, I'm expecting a huge day from the Bengals offense. I'm curious as to whether the sort of all or nothing approach of the Titans offense will actually end up landing a couple of shots here.
Well, the run game is pretty steady. And then, right. I don't know, there are worse theories of it's almost like the Georgia Tech, the old Paul Johnson, Georgia Tech theory of an offense, of a passing game. It's like, just throw it 12 times, but throw it as far as you can every time. And that's probably a good idea.
Like that, we have had a bunch of questions about Calvin Ridley in the stream today. And like, I've kind of sided with starting Ridley in almost any kind of toss-up situation with guys of a similar tier. I feel like his setup is good. Unfortunately, Nick Westbrook-Akina came back to earth a little bit last week, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals defense lets down a little bit here and allows.
It's funny how this is like a deformed version of the Chad Johnson, TJ Hushmanzada dynamic or something. It's like, yeah, Calvin Ridley's the workhorse. Nick Westbrook-Akina only scores touchdowns, but in this version, neither of them really work all that much. It doesn't. It's a very ostensible kind of thing.
Yeah, those guys used to strike fear in my heart way back when. TJ Hushmanzada, yeah, that guy was a beast. And then, of course, Ocho Cinco. Let's move on over to the afternoon slate. But first, we got a message from our friends over at Live Golf. A new season of Live Golf Fantasy is coming in 2025. New prizes, new ways to win, and more are coming in the new season. Get ready to play and sign up now at fantasy.live.golf.com. Again, that's fantasy.livegolf.com. Afternoon window. This is really the only clunker of the afternoon. Otherwise, it's bangers only. Patriots, Cardinals. Cards 6-point favorites.
Yeah, I hate this game. I hate what the Patriots turned out to be. It's in the way that it's unfortunate. I hate what the Cardinals have been all along because it was totally avoidable and it disgusts me. But the Cardinals, even in this needlessly poor form, have no good excuse for losing this game. Like, they are run dependent offense, but they should be able to run in this game. You know, knock on wood, James Conner should be able to get going in this game. So if you can run on the Patriots, then the fact that the Cardinals can't throw the ball on anyone really doesn't matter as much. But if what's his name, Drew Petzing can set up a good look or two for Marvin Harrison against either of the Joneses, Jonathan or Marcus, that's Harrison can just dunk competition all day on those guys. But if it's someone's texting me.
No problem.
If they're ending up, and this is the more likely scenario, mind you, if they're ending up with Marvin Harrison against Christian Gonzalez, that's more of a, you know, we're grounded yet again. Maybe McBride can do a certain amount, but it's always expecting a lot of Michael Wilson, I think, to step up on a short field. I don't think that's really his game. I almost think he would be better in the slot, honestly, where they otherwise are just horrendous. The Patriots, you know, Drake May, I like a lot, and I like some of the part. Demario Douglas, good player, but he runs into a tough counter with Garrett Williams. I'm worried that while Drake May, I'm assuming he's a good player, I worry that even if he is, this is a subtly dangerous spot just because it's really easy to throw the Patriots offense off schedule. And if you're on the road and if the Cardinals just have a decent game on defense, I worry that this could just be like a low scoring game where all that happens is maybe like James Conner and a little bit of Trey McBride or something.
Yeah, I like the under here at 46 and a half. We were talking on the radio on Monday, and you know, I kind of tied it back to a common theme that we discuss on this podcast. Do you think that it applies in the case of the Cardinals, where they kind of shrink the field on themselves?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They don't think about the spacing at all, and it's I don't know why they haven't just talked to the defensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator could point out to the guy, Petzing, I think his name is. They could have pointed out to him, you know, the way you are sending these routes, the combinations that they are, the depths that they are in concert. You kind of force the defense to double team Marvin Harrison, even if they're not trying to, and they're probably trying to also. So you just you put this like gravity pull on Marvin Harrison, just pulling him down further and further by the weight of the highest level of the defense. And you do nothing to break through it because Harrison can't break through the double team. Wilson, I think, can be an at least average starting NFL receiver. But again, I think he might be a better fit in the slot where his borderline 4.6 speed is less of an issue. And at the very least, we're finding that Michael Wilson is not the sort of receiver who can break through a cover two kind of look. Meanwhile, in the slot, they have Greg Dortch or Zay Jones, which is just an impressive waste of time. The other guy they signed was Chris Moore. Like, what were you even trying to do with this offense? Did you care? Did you look at the names? Did you just click descend and just take the top three from some strange I don't know what it would have been, like the year drafted that Moore and Jones, maybe they're in the same draft. I don't know what it would explain it.
I know what
it wasn't what they
from.
do. It's not what they don't do anything useful that would make sense to add them on that basis. And they're getting the result they should have foreseen. There would still be ways around it. Don't get me wrong. There's ways to work with it, and they're not accepting it. They just still keep running 3 wide sets. Like Zay Jones going 140 snaps with like 3 targets. I'm like, what's wrong with this? Why won't it work?
I think I know where the personnel decisions came from. I think our pal and producer over at SiriusXM, Sandro, who's the #1 Chris Moore fan, somehow has the ear of somebody in that Cardinals
Cincinnati
building.
legend, yeah.
Because otherwise, there's no good reason for it. Let's scoot on over. We've got a battle of the horses. We've got the Broncos hosting Indy. Broncos 3.5-point favorites. I think both these teams coming off the bye.
Doesn't that seem a little low? I would assume that the Broncos were favored by like 6.5 or something, because their defense is awesome. Their offense, I wouldn't say it's anywhere particularly close to good, but in this league, in this NFL 2024, they can't be that much worse than average or something, because there's a lot of really, really badly run NFL teams right now. A fact that the Broncos kind of benefit from, because their offense floats to like the middle of the pack when it should be at 32. or 30 maybe. So with that said, the Colts are one of those offenses that I absolutely don't even trust as much as the Broncos right now. It just doesn't. It as a theory, it was bad. They built an offense for a Joe Flacco type quarterback rather than an Anthony Richardson type one, and you can't just make it all cram together and work. Maybe the bye week fixed something. I don't know. I can't imagine going to Denver would help. So I think if the Colts win this game, it's more because of the Broncos just kind of blowing it somehow. And I don't want to count out Shane Steichen forever. I want to be clear about that. I still think he's probably one of the better offensive coordinators. I would say Steichen's got to be a top 10 offensive coordinator. Maybe we're finding out he's not as good as a head coach. Maybe his head coaching tasks sap the bandwidth of his offensive management to the point that he's kind of bad at both now. Those are things that are certainly possible, but in any case, the Broncos know what they're doing, and I don't think the Colts do at all. So it's hard for me to have any truly set hope for even like Jonathan Taylor, who of course I would defer to if I was going to name someone who produces for the Colts. But Michael Pittman might see a lot of Patrick Surtain, and especially after how badly it went for the Broncos to let Surtain cover who did it?
Judy.
Yeah, they didn't have him on Judy. They had him covering I don't know, whatever the Daryl Hodge of the moment is for the Browns. It's like they had Surtain on that guy while their number
Elijah
4
Moore
was, yeah, well, he's in the slot, which is why I couldn't think of. Yeah, that's why I couldn't name him. But anyway, the Broncos learned
Mike Woods.
Mike Woods, there you go. You had Patrick Surtain on Michael Woods. And it's like, oh, Jerry Judy's beating our number 4 corner. Oh, how did that happen? So maybe the Broncos have learned, like, yeah, just keep Surtain on Pittman. You know, Jaquan McMillian is our slot guy. He'll be on downs. Let Pierce and whatever the other ones are just kind of run themselves out of the frame. It's tough in that scenario, in my opinion, to see what the Colts can do about it.
Yeah, I'm on the Broncos here as well. I think that now that them I know they haven't been quite as strong. They've been great on the road, not as strong at home this year, but I'm starting to slowly but surely believe a little bit more in this Broncos team. Let's get to the biggest game of the week. We've got the Bills and the Lions, this one in Detroit. The Bills have kind of gone through a gauntlet of late as far as their schedule is concerned. The Lions, they'll be well rested, having played last Thursday. They are 2.5-point favorites in this one. The Bills just played, kind of a legendary game from a fantasy perspective this past weekend. What can we expect here?
Yeah, that was like a throwback to peak Baylor football or something like that,
right?
With the way that one went with the Bills and the Rams. But I think you might get largely the same game here. Granted, the Lions cannot score nearly as quickly as the Rams can, even though the Rams aren't even a big play offense themselves. It's like outside of Jameson Williams anyway, and Jahmyr Gibbs' long carries, which are just infrequent at best. It's not going to be as explosive, in my opinion, on the Detroit offense's part, but the Bills offense might be pretty much every bit as explosive. I thought I saw someone in the chat asking about maybe Amari Cooper earlier, and for what it's worth, I love Cooper this week. I like Khalil Shakir quite a bit too. Khalil Shakir, he might be the wide receiver 1 there, even with Cooper there. I don't know, but I still think that both of them are set up really well in this game because as much as the Lions' run defense isn't quite as tough as it was when they had everybody on hand, they're still tougher against the run than they are against the pass. In fact, to guys like Khalil Shakir and Amari Cooper, the biggest threat in this game is probably illegal contact penalties, and defensive pass interference penalties. Like, you might have Cooper and Shakir piling up like 100 yards in penalties against these corners, and you wouldn't get any points for it. But it's like Amick Robertson against Khalil Shakir, that's a big problem for the Lions. Cooper against like a Carlton Davis guy can only hold a receiver like Amari Cooper, and Cooper is a good enough route runner that when you grab him, that jersey's going to pull and the ref is going to see it. Also, the refs are looking for it now. The Lions are kind of getting that kind of special attention now, which they can't afford that. They don't have good enough corners to get away with that extra level of scrutiny. So I think the Bills get it. In part, it can't hurt that they need it more, but obviously the shorter week does hurt them. So maybe that would be the reason if it somehow goes to the Lions.
Yep. Give me the Bills here as well. Yeah, they are, even in a loss last week, scary. And I think they can do this. And the Lions, maybe a little overdue for a loss. We'll see. We've got
one.
yes, that they can. Well, the North is kind of nuts right now, and obviously, I don't know. They got the win over the Packers, but the Vikings hanging around. We got the Bucks and the Chargers. This one kind of like the undercard of the afternoon because we got Steelers, Eagles coming up. But I think this one's going to be a really fun game, really interesting. We've got the Chargers 3-point favorites at home.
Well, if the Chargers are favored by Vegas, I would kind of assume that means Vegas is assuming that McKechnie will play. And if McConkey's in, he's just on a blistering pace when he plays. Like he's if you could project 1,000 snaps for him, which you can't because he's too fragile, but if you could project 1,000 snaps for McConkey, he'd be on something like 120 catch, 1,600 yard pace right now, which is on the one hand crazy, but on the other hand, it kind of makes sense in my opinion because I think McConkey's very good. B, there's so much slack that falls on him in this offense. The way as much as I like what Jim Harbaugh is doing, they did not manage their personnel as well as they could have with the skill positions, signing Hayden Hurst. That's how you end up with a blocking specialist like Will Dissly being your second leading pass catcher. Like that's easily avoidable. But it's a real limitation on a guy like Justin Herbert, who's, playing at God knows what percentage health. I guess it was mostly like a bruised quad or whatever it was that he caught in the last one. So maybe that's just something he can shake off 2 days in the tub or whatever. But, Herbert just doesn't have as much ammo on hand as he should, which really sucks because it would have been they could just put DJ Chark on the field instead of Quentin Johnson. I know this is a crazy person's thought, but Quentin Johnson doesn't do anything. What's crazy is putting him on the field when he needs busted coverages to do anything. I guess he had a pretty good game in the intermediate last week, but it's like that was the Chiefs kind of letting them have it, Like if the Chargers were really threatening, they would have needed McConkey to be there. And I think in this game, in this game, McConkey could just torch, but even against these, let's say average at best boundary corners, Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum, I have no faith at all in guys like Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnson to get the better of them. So, meanwhile, unless Kamani Vidal gets another shot to kind of show off his speed, unveil some big play element that they've otherwise lacked without Dobbins, I just don't know where the firepower comes from for the Chargers. And it's true, like on the one hand, the Chargers defense is playing great, probably will play great here, but Liam Cohen versus Greg Roman, huge advantage Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers have the advantage in on-hand skill position talent at the moment too. Like I think McConkey is a more dangerous receiver at this point than Mike Evans, but I'm assuming McConkey is not quite healthy. And at least the Buccaneers have like Cade Otton instead of Will Dissly. So they also have more backfield depth, I think. So I just think that the Chargers are at risk of getting spread a little bit thin at this part of the year, given that they don't have enough guys to pitch enough innings against credible defenses or something. And I just think they're going to kind of they either need to unveil something new or they're going to kind of just keep sinking at a slow pace.
And if I know you, I don't think that we expect Roman to be able to adjust super well on the fly.
No, in fact, I would imagine this offense, even though Roman's the offensive coordinator, I would imagine there was a lot of hand-holding and close supervision on the part of Jim Harbaugh, because it's still not a Baltimore Greg Roman offense,
Right.
It's a Harbaugh offense that Greg Roman is allowed to run, but they're doing some stuff I love, but they need better players, and they are too content to keep trying stupid ideas with players that they have no reason to think can succeed. Like this Darius Davis nonsense. How did it get this bad? It doesn't make sense to me.
Darius Davis, fun college player, fun gadget
great
player.
Punt returner too. He's a murderously good punt returner, but him playing on offense is absurd. It's ridiculous. Like you might as well have one of your DBs do it.
Yeah, wasted snap, unfortunately. Let's hit Eagles Steelers. Eagles 5-point favorites. Tomlin is a dog, always dangerous. Russ playing better. It came back to earth as expected last week, but what do you make of the Eagles? There's a bit of drama amid their 9-game winning streak right now, where there's AJ Brown I think he wants the ball more. And if I was AJ Brown, I would want the ball more. But is that in the best interest of the Eagles to like kind of change their spots as far as, you know, what the offensive philosophy is, and how does it work here against the Steelers defense?
Well, AJ Brown is an awesome receiver, and of course it's reasonable that he feels it's something of a waste of his talents for him to not just be, just ripping the head off of every defense that he goes against, which we know he pretty much could, if the team were built to do specifically that. But the Eagles have been chasing a model more focused on winning games than producing EPA, which is why they're winning games instead of chasing EPA like they were in previous years. So this offense that works the best for the Eagles, particularly given how good their defense is this year, is an offense that doesn't throw the ball much. So AJ Brown feels like he's being disrespected by not getting enough targets, but all that's happened is just they haven't thrown the ball much. So no one's getting targets to the way they want to get it. Like Devontae Smith, I assure you, is not exactly psyched about being like a 5-target NFL receiver. He's used to getting 250 yards in a game, against the best defense in the country. So he doesn't like this very much either. But the fact is, it makes the Eagles a dangerous team when they stick to to a Saquon Barkley ground game behind that offensive line with the defense that they have. It's why they're winning so much, and them throwing the ball too much was why they were losing more than they needed to the first month of this year and last year. So it's not a politically easy situation for the Eagles, in my opinion, because if the way they can if the only way they can appease AJ Brown is by throwing the ball more than they should, that seems to invite unnecessary risk to me. But who knows? AJ Brown is of course going to convert targets. It's not like he's going to have a game where he gets like 12 targets for 60 yards or something. But they might have Jalen Hurts make some kind of play, turnover, or take a sack that otherwise could have just been like a 5-yard Saquon Barkley carry, And that's the way it could kind of go needlessly complicated on the Eagles if they were to throw the ball more. So the public siding with the Steelers on the 5 points makes it seem like it's the donkey play. It probably is. But even if the Steelers must win by 1, I still pick them to do it, because as much as this stuff could blow over quickly with the Eagles offense and the AJ Brown thing or whatever, the vibes have been weird around the Eagles for like 2.5 years now, and it only was put on hold because they started winning again. And it's one of those deals like, yeah, I don't really like you guys, but as long as we're winning, that's enough for me. It's like things start to go a little bit sideways. Things can go really sideways really quickly, and I think meanwhile Mike Tomlin is just the last guy you want to face pretty much ever.
He is, and he's phenomenal as an underdog, phenomenal generally, probably just best coach in the league at this juncture, getting the results that he has. So yeah, the Eagles, just even in a week where they win, just surely not beating the Panthers by enough, it was enough for some of the locker room stank to get out in public. All right, we got 3 more. We got the Packers and the Seahawks on Sunday night. This one in Seattle.
It's a dangerous spot for both teams. The Packers, of course, might have the more notable home field advantage, but the Seahawks have kind of been on their list ever since that one Hail Mary thing or whatever. I can't remember. Were there multiple stories?
The Hail Mary
story and then a Hail Mary. There's the Packers fans. I don't know. Ask Joe Bartle. I can't remember all the lore involved with this, but they're all mad at the
NFC
Seahawks.
Championship.
Yeah, they're all mad at the Seahawks. So maybe this is something of one of those like, maybe to the Packers, it's like, yes, you're losing your home field advantage by leaving, but this is also that one island, you and your people have been crazy about conquering for the last 100 years, and like maybe they're psyched for this. Maybe they're more locked in than they normally would be for a West Coast road game. But the Seahawks are definitely kind of on the upswing. Some of the questions that they've had in the first half have evaporated lately, and the Packers at the very least cannot afford to play sloppy, which I don't know. It seems, as good as they've been, and as much as I say LaFleur does a great job consistently, there's definitely been a lot of sputtering with the Packers offense at various points, and they usually find a way to make it work. They usually turn it on, turn up the heat if they need to. But again, this is just the kind of setting where you can't really waste time, waste snaps, waste opportunities. So I'm worried for the Packers, but I can't figure out how the scoring environment might be. I'm worried it might be like a lower scoring kind of game. Jair Alexander might be back for the Packers, which would be big at the boundary spot. Makes them quite a bit different as a defense right off the bat. And the Seahawks defense has been improving too lately. So if Jordan Love has one of his sputtering couple drives, or if he has one of his 2 turnovers and 2 drives kind of game scripts, that's a way it could go kind of badly for the Packers. But as long as they avoid that, I think it might be more like a, punch for punch kind of thing where both sides do a number on the other.
I'm excited for this one. This one's going to be good. And yeah, there is like a good bit of, despite not being in the same division, some scar tissue for the Packers to work out in this one against Seattle. All right, we've got Monday night doubleheader. We've got the Bears and the Vikings.
Yeah, Vikings, unless they sleepwalk into this, unless this becomes a trap game to them, which would be very weird for a lot of reasons. I mean, the division game being one detail, the record relative to the Lions being what it is. I think the Vikings are going to be probably locked in, and we cannot at all assume the same of the Bears. And even if the Bears were their version of locked in, I'm not sure it would make a difference.
I don't either. Not against this defense. I did see an interesting quarterback conundrum in the draft in the chat that you got to make the decision now. Would you play Purdy tonight or Darnold on Monday?
I'd play Purdy.
Okay.
Not that I hate Darnold or anything. It's just I think, I don't know. I'm hopeful that this game will be a high scoring one by Thursday, especially by Thursday night standards.
Yeah, no, that's what Vegas is implying, no doubt. I kind of like Darnold just because I'm dubious on
I do like Darnold this week. Yeah, I am not worried about him against the Bears at all. Maybe I should.
So
I'm not.
It's too. I mean, he definitely had like his best game of the year last week, but I still feel like now that like it's firmly established that defenses really have to worry about both Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, like that, I don't know, like that's just a lot for a defense to have to account for, and that obviously makes things a lot easier for Sam Darnold. And then lastly, and fittingly, Falcons Raiders.
Yeah, best for last, classic case. Yep. But the Falcons, man, you really gotta hate what they've been about this year, right? Like the past.
Oh man.
What a bunch of jerks. So yeah, the Raiders, they're a bunch of jerks too. Tom Telesco is maybe my number one enemy still in the NFL, but the Raiders, I am an Antonio Pierce apologist. I am a sincere McCormick, real running back, foot soldier. So I have to kind of hope the Raiders can pull this off, even though it would somewhat objectively be an incredible failure by the Falcons to do it. It's just maybe they are incredible failures. Maybe they can just somehow go, or Kirk Cousins can somehow go like 0 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. It would be very impressive actually against this Raiders defense. I forgot to look to see if they got any other corners back, but if Nate Hobbs is still out, for instance, then that makes the Raiders defense such a pushover in the passing game. But I don't know. The Falcons just suck, and
they do.
I think that the rot is setting in kind of psychically too. So we'll see. Pierce seems to have his guys show up at least for the first quarter, but admittedly, if Kirk Cousins starts playing like he should, if Zach Robinson starts running the offense like he has any idea how to do it, if guys like Drake London and Mooney get the opportunities that they should, then the Falcons should just annihilate the Raiders. But it's like, when have any of those prior conditions been met outside of that Buccaneers game?
Exactly. It was just the Bucs game, the one at home in particular. But yeah, no, that like on paper, the Falcons should crush them. And yet they are only 3.5, 4-point favorites against a banged up Aiden O'Connell and, kind of talentless Raiders team. So that I think tells you pretty much everything that you need to know. And the Raiders, I think from a fantasy angle, at least you can take, and we kind of alluded to it early on in the show, that it's all pretty narrowly channeled. Like McCormick should have the bulk of the backfield work and all
the. He agrees.
And yeah, he's trying to tell me to take him for a walk.
Bentley hates false running backs. Sorry.
He does. But he loves Brock Bowers. He loves Jacoby Myers, and so do the Raiders. But that's all I'm going to say about that. But that's going to wrap it up for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Big thanks to our sponsors over at DraftKings Pick 6, over at Live Golf, and over at the Blue Wire Network. Big thanks also to our listeners and our live stream people. And really forgive me
We're
for
using
all
the
the various
soundboard in this
noises.
episode.
Yeah, no, it's zany, it's kooky, but really appreciate everybody's questions. Best of luck in your fantasy football playoff matchups this week. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.